Hey guys, what's up? It's Sean, Autotopia LA. We're still here with the Roadster Shop guys in Illinois. Joe Rogan's car, Sickfish, there's a long story with this car, but as I understood, the stories I've heard was the car had some issues, wasn't really a great driver.
Yeah, so the car originally built by Rad Rides, and I want to say it was completed around 2003, 2004. One of the most influential pro touring muscle car builds of all time. So it's a very controversial car, right? There's a lot of drama that surrounds this car. And the fact of the matter is that this car absolutely changed the game. We touched virtually nothing on the exterior of it, which speaks volumes to what Troy did in that era. I mean, the car's exactly 20 years old, and we just brought it out to Street Machine of the Year at Good Guys Columbus a couple weeks ago, and it still looks just as relevant as any car that's out there today without touching anything on the exterior. So for all the haters out there that want to say, you know, Troy did this or Troy did that, Troy built probably one of the most timeless cars of all time.
Truly, and 20 years later, it doesn't look dated in the slightest, dude.
The industry's evolved tremendously, right? So in 2004, there just weren't the product offerings that there are today.
Right.
So even on the engine side, right, it was a big Hemi, a 572 Hemi. It was a great opportunity because Joe loved the car.
Yeah.
He just had some gripes with some of the things that the car did or didn't do as far as performance, drivability. He sent the car to us. We left the exterior 100% alone, and we cut the entire floor out of the car at the rocker panels.
Oh my God, to do that on this car has got to be so nerve-wracking.
It was very nerve-wracking. This project landed right at the beginning of COVID. So our shop was actually shut down. You know, after a few days, I'm sitting around saying like, I'm going nuts. I got to do something, right?
Bad, man.
So, you know, idle hands are the devil's tool. They say. The car was sitting there, and after a few days, I said, well, let's get this thing rocking and rolling. John and myself, we took the car, we stripped it down, cut the entire floor, firewall, from core support all the way to the tail pan of the car.
So now did it go onto one of your chassis?
It did. Ton of engineering time went into this. We developed a chassis. Being that this is a unibody car, it incorporated the front aprons, the core support assembly, the firewall, the complete floor assembly. So we laser cut floor pans, super structural, very aesthetically pleasing. A really, really fun project to be able to finally step away from my management duties for a little while and do what I really love doing, right? So it was a blast. It was an absolute blast. Got a lot of experience with the 70 Cuda platform. So I know the good, the bad, some of the problems that you run into when you build these cars. And the very first one is the foot space in it. The ergonomics and where your feet go when you put a 6-speed manual and you lower the car. One way to solve that is a torque tube and a rear mounted transaxle, right? Because you're taking the bulk of the bell housing and the transmission away from what would typically be your footwell area, and you're moving it all to the back.
That's genius.
That's kind of how this whole thing started. So Bowler transmission, he put together a torque tube system with a 6-speed out back, and the whole chassis was designed around that. Fast track front, fast track rear perimeter style frame that integrates that torque tube system.
Yeah.
And it's all mated to a Mercury SB4 7-liter LS7 based long block. Reason for selecting it is really because like the Hemi aftermarket stuff is great, but we haven't had tremendous success with it.
Okay.
And I wanted to leave the car looking exactly like it was. Well, you look at like the Hellcat packaging or the Elephant, and they've got huge blowers on the top.
Sure.
And with this ride height, tribal knowledge tells me that blower is gonna be 2-3 inches through this AAR style hood. This really fills up the fender wells. It's a proven package. It's got a little bit of the Hemi look with the coil on plug, you know, the hemispherical heads. I know Joe is very into sound, the feel, the experience.
Yeah.
From my experience, there's nothing that provides that better than on an NA platform than this motor does.
And I forget, what's this engine make power-wise?
So that motor, naturally aspirated 750 horsepower. And it's the RPM range, which is really the novelty of it. So you can shift that motor about 8,300 RPMs. It's not crazy on the low end torque, but when you can spin a motor like that up to that RPM range, it just keeps
starts to really come on as you get
really
higher up in the
up.
range. So exterior, you touch nothing. Did you guys have to do any reworking of the engine bay?
We did, yeah. The car was originally caged, and we were able to actually retain the majority of the cage, but in putting it on a perimeter style frame, it does have some new down bars that tie into the cage that add some structure to the front frame. Everything in here was also engineered, all solid modeled. These inner fender wells, that's all been designed for proper tire clearance. There's a piece of 1 5/8 DOM tube that you see kind of on that high line of the tangent. We rolled the sheet metal into it. It's very structural, but also gives you full turning radius. I think we're 295 on the front of this car as well, so some pretty big meats on the front of it.
Yeah, God, this engine bay just looks beautiful. The simplicity of it, it's very elegant.
It's very simple when you look at it from this view. When you see the car up on the lift, it is incredibly complex. There's oil coolers, power steering coolers, all sorts of remote cooler lines. Everything is really neatly packaged up under the front of this thing. It's very serviceable. Everything's where it needs to be. A lot of heat insulation. The headers, just like we saw in the Grand National. Header shield actually wrapped these, so it's a stainless liner that goes over the top.
Oh yeah.
That they actually weld together. So just trying to keep the heat down, keep everything insulated.
Yeah.
And it's gonna live in Austin, Texas, where it's already hot enough, so.
You can't knock Troy and what his company does.
You absolutely
20-year-old build.
I would encourage people to try. Everybody that's at the top knows you're not at the top because the top is Troy, right?
Do you know how many, and I'll tell you what, I've heard that from you.
Yep.
I've heard it from my friend Jason at Timeless Customs. I've heard it from Steve Strope. I've heard it from Sean Smith.
Yep.
Everybody says Troy is the best.
100%. Everybody's got a tremendous amount of respect for him. So to be honest with you, doing what we did to this car, it realistically was an honor. And being able to disassemble the car and cut the car apart, it's actually pretty neat to see the level of craftsmanship that was underneath it. I mean, I get it. The suspension components, they were great for the time. They just don't get the job done. So
yeah.
I
mean, companies like you didn't even exist. I mean, I know you did as a business,
we were down
but
there,
I'm saying
we were in our infancy. I mean, back then, you're talking about 2004, we're putting fiberglass 32 Roadsters together with solid axles under the front of them. And Troy's putting 22-inch wheels under a pro touring muscle car with a fuel-injected Hemi.
Unheard of at the time, yeah.
Kind of led the movement a little bit here. The wheels were updated. It's a modern HRE wheel. It's actually interesting, you know, you bring all these different builders together. It was a Ring Brothers design wheels. I think they used it on their G-Code Camaro, if I remember correct. So years back. The car originally was a 5-spoke, so keeping it as a 5-spoke was appropriate. But beyond that, I mean, yeah, the lines of the car, the bumpers, the spoilers, the hood, it's just the way it was.
It's stellar. I mean, that little spoiler on there is just
great,
dude.
Yeah,
it's so fitting.
It is great.
And the bumpers, obviously, pretty tucked in
Bumpers are tucked, you know, they were all plated back in the day. They remain exactly the way they were. One of the few additions we did do to the car was adding some door handles to it.
Did it have poppers?
Just shaved door handles with poppers. So 2004, that era, everybody's shaving the door handles off the car, but we tried to come up with something that could integrate into the modern electric door latches that we have in it. So we designed and machined kind of a scaled down version of the factory handle, but it's electronic. So what you see on it is just a button.
Dude.
And that's it.
That's bitchin'.
And then it's got a key fob for lock and unlock, so just like a new car, you know.
What are the brakes on this?
Bayer, 14-inch Extremes. And
Do
Bayer,
you use them exclusively, Bayer?
Exclusively across the board. We've got our Elite Series that has our RS logo, Roadster Shop in the face of them. Polished caliper, which is a little unorthodox for what we typically do, but just wanted it to blend in. It's got big brakes, they work really well. There's no sense in calling attention to the every car's got brakes, right? They all have brakes, you know.
You would hope.
Yeah, you know, well, here we go again, you know. But,
I still can't get over the metalwork here.
The metalwork is great, and that spoiler is still like, it just works so well with the lines of the car. Without even modifying these cars, that body platform just looks so good at that ride height.
And it does, I mean, I know the Cuda fairly well. It helps a lot to get the bumper flushed in like that.
Yep.
What's exhaust?
So the exhaust, that whole rear kind of diffuser area is left exactly as it was. Even the tailpipes themselves, we kept the tips and we just modify them to tie into our exhaust system. So the tips, they were hand fabricated out of sheet metal by Troy years ago. Right at the base of that, you see kind of a line of little button head fasteners. We did belly pan the majority of the car. So there's a big stainless steel fuel tank in there that packages some brand new OE GM fuel pumps that are electronically controlled, but it's got a louvered panel that ties into that, and then it blends right into the rear independent cross member.
Yeah.
And then moving forward, it almost looks like a forged carbon fiber belly pan. It's a unibody type chassis. It's just such a structurally sound package that you really feel it when you're driving the car.
It sounds exceptional. That's why I was.
Yeah, the cars, they sound good, man.
The
the motor does most of the work, but it's long tube headers that we fabricate here in-house. It's got a X-pipe 3-inch stainless that goes into a couple of Borla mufflers. And we do have a kind of cool little bypass system that can bypass the mufflers just in case you really want to hear that.
Get rowdy.
Saying, but it's plenty rowdy going through.
I'll bet, man.
Some of the things, just to bring it up, you know, to like current standards, is making the car more easy to use, right? Putting all your modern day, you know, mechanicals, creature comforts. You've got solid state battery disconnect button right here, a battery tender access right here.
Oh, jeez.
So, you know, for a guy like Joe who's got a couple of cars and probably doesn't use them every single day, makes it super easy. Not to have to pop the trunk or dig for an outlet. You just plug that into your battery tender, leave her sit. And then up here, it's a little pressure pad. That's again like a little OE sealed switch. It's an Avant Garde interior in it that Jeremy Carlson did.
Now, is the interior all new stuff, or is it?
The interior is all brand new. You've got jumper posts right here. In case the battery goes dead, we've got some little adapters that slide right into there. You've got access up here to you know, typically magnetic little panels. Yeah, usually you'd be in there with, you know, some sort of upholstery trim tool, trying to pry a panel out.
Totally.
With something like that, you know, it's typically a plastic panel on the backside that's all milled out. It's got little receivers for magnets, some structure on there, and it's leather wrapped, all painted. And then when you go to put it back in, it just registers.
It just pops back into place like that?
Clicks itself in.
I hope that's something we see more and more interior shops doing, because I've had to deal with the cars where it's, like you said, some little tool, you're wedging it in, and then when you remove something a handful of times, it doesn't quite fit the same way anymore.
You only get like X amount of times you can take that door panel on and out before those clips are dead.
Yeah, 100%, dude.
Did a few things that we updated, like just kind of some standard stuff. We use a BMW style latch system typically on hoods and deck lids and things like that. That's a whole engineered little assembly in there that's got an electronic popper, return springs, pull cables and all that, so you know when you close that deck lid. You don't have to slam it like you would, you know, some of these new cars. It just, muscle cars are kind of known for, you know, taking that lid, banging out of it to get it to close.
Oh yeah, and then God forbid should you have a spoiler across the back where it's gonna
chipping and right.
Yes. So this is an Avant Garde interior.
Yes. The interior completely done by Jeremy Carlson. You know, the interior, that's one of those things that was fairly simple when the car was done.
Yeah.
Stock dash, it had some Recaro seats in it and a stereo system that was, you know, of the era.
Yeah.
So it seemed appropriate to bring that up to today's standards. Just like the Grand National, the focus was ergonomics. To make this car feel very much like an exotic car, you should be sitting in it like a sports car. The torque tube system, that was a lot of the thought process with that as well, was being able to place the shifter exactly where you want it, being able to open up the footwell exactly for your feet, for your pedal assembly.
Yeah.
And I think the finished product reflects that. It all worked out really well, and you do feel when you're driving the car that it's more of an exotic car than it is a muscle car, but it still has all the cool muscle car stuff.
I like how they paid homage to this piece of the Challenger and Cuda, right?
Yep.
Retaining that element to it.
Everything in the interior is that way. The door panels. This does a really good job of picking up some of the styling cues that were there, but bringing it up to today's standards. The seats are the same way, the pleat pattern in the seats, but it's a Recaro Sportster seat.
This is a mind-numbing interior, bro. This is
Even
really...
some neat stuff too, like this wheel. Some of my buddies over there at the Ring Brothers, that's something they produce, so it's got their wheel on it, but it's actually a carbon fiber ring. We chose to leather wrap it just to kind of fit the theme of the interior, but the nice thing about it is that all these billet steering wheels, you know, a lot of guys make them and they're very heavy, and you feel that when you're driving the car. So with just having this billet machine center and a carbon ring, it lends to really good steering feel in the car. And not that it's a bad thing, but it's a noticeable improvement when you lighten the wheel like this.
These switches, the fitment is like, this is just friggin' phenomenal.
Everything's just made up of a combination of 3D printed and machine parts.
Right.
I mean, even this little door handle, that's a 3D printed aluminum part that ties into some of the C7 vet latch assemblies that we use, so it's a cable pull. You just don't realize the amount of time and effort that goes into something as simple as
the door pull.
As you're sitting in there and you see there's not a lot going on, and we try to keep it that way just so the car's very simple. Like anybody can jump in there and you know how to use it, right? So you've got an emergency brake button, lock, unlock, power windows, headlight wiper, high beam on the dash. The only thing that's kind of unique to it, there's a hydraulic lift button that's just ahead of the shifter. Just like the Grand National, it's a Fox triple adjust coilover on this car, and it's a hydraulic cylinder that sits on all four of them. So it gives you about 2 inches of lift out of the car.
On the whole car?
Yep.
That's
just to make the car more functional.
What are can I light up the gauges?
Yeah, just key that on. The gauges are Dakota digital. Yeah, and within that cluster, we've got a couple nice little OE AC vents, blow ice cold right on you. The things you take for granted, like your foot sitting on a billet pedal assembly right there.
Yeah.
That's something that we've got a tremendous amount of design time into. When you drive the car, you notice the difference, that there's no flex in the pedals, the ratios are right, they're placed exactly where they should be. So
yeah, I mean,
if you're heel toe shifting, something like that, all that's kind of been taken into consideration.
This whole car is very elegant. It's
The idea was to not make it anything like in excess, you know, it should just kind of blend in. I hope he digs it, and I think
he's got to be stoked.
I think he will. Just having driven the number of vehicles I've driven over the years and the stuff we've built, this is definitely a standout as far as like drivability and the driving experience.
Yeah. I see there's even a mic here so you can have Bluetooth.
Yeah, there's a mic for Bluetooth. Again, that was getting a stereo system in it that's got integration for your iPhone, something that Joe wanted, so a big Alpine head unit. But if you slide that center console back, actually that thing just slides straight back.
Oh yeah.
So that'll illuminate once the car is keyed on, and that's the AC controls. And there is an exhaust controller in there. Like I mentioned, there's a bypass on the exhaust system itself. It does have like a rev match feature on it, so you can engage that, and on downshifts it'll blip shift.
Really?
And stuff like that, yeah.
What a cool way to package this too, dude. Oh, what a stunning car. God dang, man. I don't know how he couldn't be stoked with it. You know, I mean, we haven't driven it yet, but I know you, and you wouldn't be talking about how great it drives if it didn't.
It really, I mean, we've put a tremendous amount of miles on the car already.
Yeah.
I always find that the best way for a car that's really going to be driven, you really need to get it out on an actual road trip. Because when you're shaking down these cars and you just kick them around town for 5 miles here, you don't see highway speeds, traffic, stop and go, rough roads. So we took this car, we immediately got it off of the dyno. The next day, road tripped it from here to Columbus, Ohio, and put about 400 miles on it. The car performed flawlessly. I mean, it gives you a really good idea, some small things you can punch list to improve on the car. Our goal is to make the car absolutely perfect when it's time to deliver it to the customer, regardless if it's Joe Rogan or
no, totally.
I mean, ultimately, I strive to make myself happy with it. So if I can do that, I know that just about anybody will do it. So.
Yeah. Well, dude, let's throw cameras in. Let's go for a drive. All this talking about how good it drives. Let's go for a ride in it, man. God, it's hilarious, the high revving thing. It's like, that was 4,500 RPMs, and I know I'm like just starting to get into it. Wow, this car feels bitchin' on the road, huh?
Dude, it's nuts. Doesn't it feel more like a sports car?
Yeah, and I mean, especially the interior really lends to that I've been in plenty of Cudas and Challengers, and this is closer to like an AMG car or something on inside here. What a brilliant idea, dude, to do a transaxle rather than having a massive transmission tunnel.
Yeah. It's really like the tunnel height, you gain some, but it's the foot room that you really gain, because the bell housing's a fraction of the size.
Oh yeah, the way this car turns.
Oh yeah, you could stuff this car through the corners, man.
Man.
You'll never make it push. You won't make it oversteer.
Wow. Yeah, boy, you're not kidding, dude. A completely different car than the Grand National. Well, it's not a surprise to me, but I gotta be honest, dude. Driving now 2 cars that you guys have, I mean, I get that you didn't create the exterior of this car, right? But
and everything that makes it work, we did.
That's what I mean. And the immediate confidence it gives you in the drivability factor, pretty incredible.
It's awesome, man.
I mean, that's funny, dude. That's $6,000.
Dude, you're leaving like 2,300 on the table there.
I mean, it's amazing.
You really got to train yourself to get used to the RPM range. At first, you feel like you're hurting it, but that's right where you want to be.
It's hard to wrap your head around it, though, when you're used to old school V8s that, you know, 6,000, 6,500, you're at the end of the line. Boy, this car just, I mean, the steering is just wonderful on this. I mean, it really, you're right. It really does feel like way more of a sports car.
Yeah, that was really the focus on this whole thing. Aside from the cool interior, the cool little tweaks here and there, the goal was to make the car do exactly what it's doing right now. This is about the driving experience.
Yeah, yeah. Is it a manual brake or powered brake?
Manual brake, but it's a 7/8 bore master, and it's got a pretty decent ratio, so you got a little bit of mechanical advantage there. But
yeah,
the width of those cylinder heads makes it pretty tough to package any power brakes. But typically on the stuff we build, if it's a manual transmission, I almost always run manual brakes. I favor the pedal feel, you know?
Yeah, I mean, I've been in manual brake cars where you're digging and digging and you can't get any brake happening, you know? And when it's set up right, I like it because you get all that feel and touch on it, you know? Oh my gosh, Joe.
You think he's gonna dig it?
Joe, in the event that you don't love the car, Autotopia LA. Nah, I don't know how somebody that's into muscle cars couldn't just fall in love immediately with this. Everything about it to me is just so right, dude.
Thank you.
I can't get, I'm like, wow, I'm a little bit speechless on this one. Just such an enthusiast, but there's cars I get in where I go, it's really neat, and if I never drove it again, I'm good with that. Then there's the ones where the whole time in my head I'm going, don't fall in love, don't fall in love, don't fall in love. You know what I mean? Like this, it's gonna be the one time I ever get to drive this car. God, the way it shifts is so bitchin'. I love the ergonomics are really nice on this car. I was wondering when I first sat down if it was sitting too high.
Now you
Not
sit
at all.
pretty nice in it. The floor is actually dropped down in between the frame rails to accomplish that, so you can get the seating position.
Because otherwise it would prop you up too much, huh?
It is very drivable. You know, it's honestly a great highway car.
You can tell though, that engine doesn't like low RPM,
it's not
right?
That like 1500 range. It's not a huge fan of it with that cam setup.
Right.
You can drive through it. You know, you got to throttle it a little bit, but as soon as you get that thing up, it loves being up top. You know. Yeah.
And they're built for that, right? I mean, Mercury's kind of made a living out of throw the throttle all the way down on the boat.
Take your hands off. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, I think they know their demographic and their clientele. It's like they put the throttle down, 2 hands on the wheel. So.
And even the cage work, dude, it's so out of the way. And
so the cage, we actually retain like the vast majority of it. That was in there from when Troy did it.
I mean, the detail work on this interior, even the way all the words, like it looks correct to the period of time, you know, but so much cleaner. Well, the pedal really is in a nice place, dude. I mean, I've driven old Cudas before, and the gas pedal's down here and the brakes up here, and there's no way you're rev matching.
Yeah, we try to, we're pretty cognizant of that when we set them up, where you feel like that pedal effort's going to be on the brake so you can roll right over on that throttle.
Yep. Every time I'm in a manual car, I always do that because I feel like it's always an opportunity to practice my heel toe.
Sounds this car.
Yeah,
granted, we don't have all the cool turbo sounds, but that Mercury motor, dude, it's nasty sounding.
It's such a unique sound too. Like, I know it's based on an LS, but it is definitely not an LS.
No.
But suspension and chassis, we're hitting some kind of nasty little bumps. You feel them more than you do in the Grand National, but nothing uncomfortable. We're not hopping and skipping and bumping around.
And it's nice to see, like, you're not dodging them. And you shouldn't have to, right? Unless it's a pothole. You're just cruising right over the top of it. And this car is set up a little bit stiffer than the Grand National just because it's got more of a sports car vibe. It's meant to do sports car things. Like, even autocross stuff, this car really does perform.
I'll bet it does.
Quite well.
This would be a fun car, like out where I live, to go hit some canyons and go rip. Hilarious. There's $4,000, so we're halfway to the power band.
Yeah, it changes the way you drive. Like on the highway, usually at 3,000 RPMs, you want to shift, and drop that thing down so you're at a comfortable cruising speed.
Yeah.
now you want to be at 3,000 the whole time you're on the highway because it's right in that sweet spot where the thing will rev to 8,300, but it's right before its power band.
Is that where you set a rev limiter to, or do you set it shy of that?
No, that's like a conservative RPM. I mean, you could spin this thing higher than that, but that's about where the rev limiter's set. Feel free to carry a little momentum through there and you'll see how flat the car stays.
Jesus, dude. That ain't a friggin' Cuda, man. Come on. I gotta imagine from Joe, who owned the car, and the stories that came with it and all that stuff, where ultimately it wasn't like this where he could get in and just go enjoy driving it.
Yep.
How fun for him that he's actually going to be able to turn the key and go have a fully capable car.
Yeah, I'm super stoked for him to get this thing in his hands.
I'm almost sure he owns 1 or 2 Porsches that have been built by Sharkworks. You know, I mean, it doesn't get more pure of a sports car, I think, than an old 911.
Yep.
I mean, I think he's going to trip out that he's got a car that kind of handles like that.
Yeah, it's got a little bit of Porsche handling in it. I mean, the feeling of it, it's very planted. It feels not too different than like a Porsche or, you know, most of your exotics nowadays. You know?
Yeah. Wow. Thank you so much, dude, for, I mean, I got to say it to your whole crew for taking the time and energy with us and
dude, it's my
like
pleasure,
letting
man.
me get behind the seat of these.
It's awesome to have you behind the wheel of these. I mean, they're 2 standout cars for us as far as the performance and drivability.
Yeah.
So it's great to get people that have the experience driving cool stuff behind the wheel.
I mean, just exceptional cars. Really amazing. Now I got something to grab onto too. There was that up in the RPMs.
Yeah, that's that sweet spot.
It really does. Tonally, it starts to change up there. Jeez, dude. Holy shit.
The car works pretty good, huh? It'll go around some corners.
What'd you say you're running up front? 295?
It's 265 on the front. I thought we were 295s
Got
on
it.
these, but they're 265s. 265 35s.
But that's some real handling for, I mean, I can't imagine that engine's that light up front.
It's not light, and the, you know, it's got a pretty, like, mild alignment in it. It's a street, so it's just 0 on the camber. It's not like it's anything set up to really go faster on the
So
corners,
if you really wanted to make this car handle, you could dial it.
You get it set up.
Jeez, man.
But it'll go around some corners, you know?
It definitely goes around corners. Whoa, this thing's so rad! God dang, man! Shit.
There we saw just a little sliver of that rev limiter.
The sound is, it's weird. Down low, the car sounds more like a muscle car. As you start coming up, it almost sounds like an exotic.
It does, man. When you hear those cams and valves singing, It's got a sound that's unlike anything else.
It's like nothing, dude. I've never heard an engine that sounds like these things.
And man, it's just so much fun to be up there in that RPM range.
Yeah.
You know?
Has it taken you a minute to adjust to revving a V8 up that high, or are you used to it?
We've done quite a few of these packages now.
Yeah.
And to be honest with you, it took me forever to get used to them. I honestly didn't like it at first because I was like a little bit afraid I was going to hurt it. You know, I'm shifting the car at like 6,500 RPMs, and you just don't get the experience.
Yeah.
And once I finally like grew some balls and realized how you got to drive them, you just got to drive it like a sport bike, you know?
Yeah.
Constantly downshifting, zinging the RPMs.
Right. Like that's what this engine wants you to do, doesn't it? Right. Look at all those stripes.
Damn hoodlums out here.
That old timer earlier probably hated us.
Meanwhile,
What's going on, fellas? We're filming a car for a TV show. Roadster Shop.
I put my gun away, man.
Yeah, we checked with your neighbor earlier.
Your neighbor? I live here, not my fucking neighbor.
No, your neighbor told us to park.
What's that?
Your neighbor said we could park right here.
This is my property, not my neighbor's property.
I'm sorry, we were just...
Okay?
I'm sorry, I get it, I don't know. I'm just doing...
I'm telling you right now. Okay?
Okay, I'm sorry.
Does it look like his driveway is this driveway?
No. He was there, he just said you can pull in right there. My neighbor just...
Fuck you, man.
Looks like someone might have been out there giving them trouble. Let me see real quick.
Is somebody upset?
Okay, we'll do one more pass by and we'll call it on flybys.
Getting a little grief over there.
We don't need to do the pull away shot.
Yeah, this one leaving the line is, it's not that kind of car, you know?
Yeah, sure. He didn't look happy at the screaming Mercury SB4 motor coming by.
Hey, what's not to like about that? Come on, man.
I part of me was wondering, like, is he coming out to enjoy the sounds?
Right.
But
it's not often something like that happens in your neighborhood.
it's not. Wow, dude. See you back at the shop, boys.
It's a night and day like difference from the Grand National, right? But
two dramatically different cars. Each one equally is exceptional. I mean, from everything, just the interior you're sitting in, right? How much different it looks. Oh, okay. I mean, the interior sets a very different feeling for you, you know?
Yeah.
But then that high revving engine is like, it's intoxicating, dude. It just makes you want to keep going.
I know.
Like, rev it. And then down low, it sounds like a friggin' muscle car.
I know, it's just got that lumpy idle.
What a
Really,
Dr.
like,
Jekyll, Mr. Hyde type engine.
And you'd think too, for something that's got that lumpy of an idle, that nasty of a cam, it's not difficult to like get the car off the clutch and get it moving.
Not at all.
Yeah.
Not at all. Both your cars that I've driven today, ridiculously drivable cars, man. All right, you guys, so that's day one with the Roadster Shop. We've shot 2 cars. I gotta say, I came out here with very high expectations. I mean, let's be honest, it's the Roadster Shop we're talking about. Huge reputation, lot at stake, and I'm completely blown away. 2 radically different vehicles, both just as good as the next one. I mean, I'm talking about exceptional. The look, the sound, the drivability, the ergonomics, every aspect of what you want out of a car. These guys are killing it. It's no wonder they're at the top of the game. And I can't even believe what we're gonna get into tomorrow. So for today, I'm gonna leave you with a thanks for hanging and watching what we do. And I promise you're gonna see some more really cool stuff from the guys here at the Roadster Shop. So thanks for hanging, you guys. I'll see you in the next one. Later.